Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 47, another 7 curious interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. First one is Parler. So you may have seen this come up on social feeds and thought, what the heck is that? So Parler is Twitter but without the censorship. So why is that important? Well, a lot of the Trump fans have moved from Twitter to Parler since the US elections because they feel that they are being censored. Or at least challenged with what they say. So they can't really say everything that they want to say right now, and quite frankly, quite rightly. However, this is quite indicative of a wider thing going on. So the Web 3.0, the new open internet future that we were promised, was a future free of being tracked by big companies for commercial gains. So people like Google and Facebook, they track you, they sell stuff to you. So there was a big list of open applications that you should take on. You should, for instance, use DuckDuckGo instead of Google search. You should use the Brave browser instead of Chrome because they don't track you and they're good. However, the conservatives and the right-wing factions are also taking these on because they can say whatever they want and they won't get checked. So it's interesting how we thought they were going to be used for the bright and the good, and now they're probably going to be used by essentially the wrong people. So Parler is the new Twitter. So Gab or MeWe is the new Facebook, Rumble is the new YouTube, DuckDuckGo is the new Chrome, Brave browser is the new Chrome, Google search, the other one, Telegram or Signal is the new WhatsApp, etc. etc. So so Tim Berners-Lee, for instance, the inventor of the internet, has his solid manifesto, which is all really in this space saying, we should take control of the internet. It's kind of weird how it's taken a kind of a 90-degree turn at this point. So we'll see where this one goes. Parler has doubled in size over a week. So that's kind of what's going on there. So I'm watching that one like a hawk. The UK has, or the UK government has invested some money and some time in an engineering consultancy called Fraser Nash, who have looked into the possibility of space solar farms. So this is hundreds of thousands of micro-reflectors assembled in space by small robots, launched through 200 or so satellite launches. And what they will do is they will, 24 hours a day, as you see from this animation, you can always see the sun if you're in the right place. They will collect the sun's rays, project them from these two solar arrays into a central satellite and beam those down to somewhere in the UK. So this, the theory is like, how can you get this up and running by 2040? And by 2050, this might be providing 4 million homes worth of energy. So this is 15% of the UK's energy requirements, making it sort of truly sustainable. Obviously, what happens if this misses and fries a nearby town or village or city? What about all this junk that we're going to put into space? But you've got people like Elon Musk launching things into space left, right and centre. What that's doing is that's bringing down the cost of space launches. So at the moment it's about $3,000 per kilo to get something into space, and pretty soon it'll be $1,000, and pretty soon it'll be less than that as well. So perfectly possible, but that's where the UK government are looking. Drone shows. So the VW ID4 had a really good drone show last week to launch their their electric car in China. So I got looking into that because that was pretty cool. And obviously we've seen these before. We've seen these at the Olympics, and there was a big Intel one a couple of years ago. It turns out there's quite an interesting drone wars, should we call it? So 2018, I think it was, Intel took the world record with 2,066 drones. Earlier on this year, Russia took it with a few more, 2,200 or something like that. And then China came out with 3,051 drones. So I just thought it was super cool. So these are all animated as well. So this is the Beidou geosatellite system. So this is basically Chinese own GPS system. So it's basically, they needed a theme, so they just chose the state satellite. So there you go. So it's pretty cool. All verified by Guinness Book of Records, and cool. Companies House in the UK have for the first time forced a company to change their name because they could be a vector for hacking. So this is using a relatively old technique, or this is a new version of an old technique. So this is, so in the olden days you do SQL injection, so you would put database commands into the kind of the form on the website, you could actually, because that goes into a database, you could actually write database commands in the form, and some databases might execute them, bringing down the database, etc. So it was a sort of a cheeky and also quite a dangerous hack that you could do if your database was unprotected. Now, also, you can do that with what's called cross-site scripting in HTML. So you can get forms essentially to execute scripts on other websites, which is what this piece of code would have done and can do. So if in a form it says what is your company name, and you type this in, it could actually execute the script on the separate website, which could therefore do something malicious. So a couple of interesting things here is, one is, it's the first time that companies have actively done it, actively said, no, you can't do that, so they're getting wise to that. Obviously, if you run databases, you should also be wise to this sort of thing, but also the company then changed its name to the company whose name used to contain HTML script tags limited. So they're still playing along with the game. So there you go, find that mildly interesting. Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, I also have problems pronouncing that, are buying or trying to buy WREXAM Football Club. Now, if you're not into your football, and I'm not particularly into it, but I still follow this, WREXAM are pretty low down. They're sort of 5th tier in the UK as far as leagues go. And even in that, I think they're 14th or 15th in that league as well. Now they're fan owned, so there's no big sort of ownership issue there. So what Ryan Reynolds wants to do is buy the club almost purely as a theme for a quote-unquote Netflix-style docudrama, so reality show. So I think, the Kardashians buy a football club. Instantly it will become cash positive, because just because of the rights to whoever takes on the final show. So as far as if you're WREXAM, you're thinking, what on earth's going on? But this is a really interesting way of essentially funding content of the future, looking for the entertainment value in it, not just the TV rights. So there's no TV rights in WREXAM because they're not really shown on TV. So you're not going to get the big sort of Premier League rights windfall if you own the club. So this one is actually building up a club, potentially to bring it into that world as well, but more or less just as a theme, as a script plot for a show. So I thought it was a really interesting way of funding content of the future, and very now as well. Now this is one I'm going to get wrong, so I'll try and skip over it relatively quickly, but scientists have just figured out how to do indistinguishable obfuscation. So this is almost like the holy grail of cryptography. So this allows you to take a program, some code, anything basically. It could be running on your car, it could be running on your phone, it could be running on a computer, it could be the software you're using right now. And to obfuscate it means to sort of mince it up so that nobody can see how the code actually works. What you put into the code still comes out correctly, but each time you run the code, it can actually be, or save the code, it can actually be obfuscated so that nobody can crack it, nobody can see how it's doing what it's doing. So imagine this in a banking app. So the banking app could actually see whether your transaction is legitimate or not, or it could see whether your password, for instance, is legitimate or not, and it doesn't have to check with a server. So normally you have keys that you need to pass to and from, and some are private and some are public and all that sort of stuff. So this one, if they can have a little black box of code that you can't crack, and each time you generate the code it can be different as well, nobody can actually see how it's creating the output from the input. So for instance, if you need edge computing, so you need a car going through a city needs to identify itself to a traffic light, for instance. Before, it would have had to probably go through some sort of web system to identify itself and say, yes, you're a legitimate car, I know where you are, etc. Now this can just do the code locally. So this could be a big deal. So it makes software unhackable. And what will we do with that? But it's kind of cool. Quite hard to get your head around. However, this could be quite interesting. And finally, we have a great, this is Ollie and Alex, who are a creative duo. If you don't know how advertising works, it works is the people who come up with the ideas, quote unquote again, are people called creative team, and they're usually a copywriter and a creative. They usually graduate and they stick together and they try and find placements in the big agencies until one of the big agencies go, these people are good, we should take them on. So that's what Ollie and Alex did, and the way that they got noticed is they went to all of the big agencies. So you can just see a few here. You've got Lucky Generals, you've got AMV, you've got Mother, for instance, and they went to their TikTok handles and found out they hadn't registered them. So these Ollie and Alex registered them, and then basically sent out a video saying, hey, all of you big advertising agencies, we have your TikTok handle, and if you don't give us a placement, we'll start posting stuff on it. Obviously tongue-in-cheek, they wouldn't have done anything daft. However, I thought that, number one, that was a really interesting way of getting noticed. Number two, for all of these big agencies who are at the forefront of advertising and all the platforms, like, why didn't they have their own TikTok handle registered? So that was kind of revealing. So it's a little bit embarrassing. And then third, I thought was really interesting. So Batten Hall, who are essentially a social agency as well, they basically released a video saying, hey, Ollie and Alex, why are you going to the big ad agencies? Clearly you're looking in the wrong place. They don't get it. We get it. In fact, we get it so much that we've registered your TikTok handle because you forgot to register it yourself. So if you don't do your placement with us, we'll start posting stuff on yours. So I thought it was a really interesting way. The whole advertising agency sort of, or land, lit up with this. A really good way of getting noticed, especially with lockdown. You can't really sort of traipse around like you did do before, and especially the modern way of getting noticed to get a job. Yeah, I thought it was really cheeky, really interesting. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed that, give it a like down below, probably, so to speak, and I'll see you next week.